Welcome to Putting It Together, the podcast that goes through the entire body of work of Stephen Sondheim, show by show and song by song. My name is Kyle Marshall, your self-described Sondheim expert. I am so excited for you to meet Shoshana Greenberg, who is a first-time guest on this show, and I'm also excited to go back and revisit Follies. It's a show that I continue to have a deeper and deeper appreciation for, especially as I get older. And weirdly enough, I have just discovered that there is, I don't want to say community theater, but maybe just a shade above a community theater production of Follies happening in my city. I'm very curious to see how they pull it off. As far as I understand, right on the program, it says it is the concert version, probably meaning that they're going to basically be on microphones and maybe not a whole lot of set design going on. But I am still excited to see how it goes. Right here at the top, though, I did want to mention one thing here. Of course, I talk usually in the middle section during the ad reads about Patreon and how you can be a supporter of this show. You can, of course, join people like Emily and Susanna and even Talmadge, who have all been recent supporters on the Patreon, new patrons over on Patreon. Something that I have not officially announced yet and will hear in just a couple of weeks, but a big change that I want to enact on the show is to have it be completely fan-supported. And as such, and for that to become feasible, there would need to be a bit of a makeup as far as the amount of patrons that I have. Like I always say, please do not donate if it impacts you negatively financially. This is not me trying to guilt trip people into being supporters. If you can't, you can't. Totally cool. This show is always going to remain free, so there's no worry about that. However, you can start supporting for as little as $1 a month. You would still be able to vote on polls that are posted there every month. For instance, like next month, we're going to be doing a bonus on Mandy Patinkin's projects, and right now there is a dead heat between Yentl and the John Lacusa version of The Wild Party. So if you want to help break that tie, you could become a patron right now and vote on that very poll. There's also some bonus audio that I throw up over there occasionally when I actually have the time to do so, and other little goodies I like to sprinkle out over there as well. In the higher tiers, there is some other cool stuff that gets pushed to you. But honestly, if you're just to support for $1, you get a bunch of little goodies that are thrown your way as well. So that's my little pitch. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you for your time. Let's get into talking about a song that was written under a bit of duress on Sondheim's part, but still a very worthy song to discuss, called Ah, But Underneath.
Broadway's Sondheim on Sondheim gives us a glimpse inside his life through his own words and lyrics. And here performing Ah, But Underneath is Vanessa Williams.
Never judge a book by its cover. The thing that counts is what's inside. Never judge a lady by her lover.
Shoshana Greenberg, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you're a fellow podcaster, of course. You also have your own show. You want to just tell everyone what it is, what it's about?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Scene to Song. So I guess it's like a similar format to this in that I bring on a guest for each episode, and the guest will talk about either a musical theater writer, or like a topic or like a larger idea in musical theater that brings together different shows. I just started the 6th season, so my seasons are kind of like years, so this is starting the 6th year of it.
What can people expect for the 6th season? What episodes have you done?
Yeah, well, I've done one with you.
Yes.
On Sondheim, which I'm really excited about. The 2 that have come out already are on Shuffle Along with Cassine Gaines, who just wrote a book about, or just had a reissue of an updated version of his book, When Broadway Was Black, which is about the musical Shuffle Along. And the one that just came out is on song cycles, the idea of song cycles in musical theater. The guest Timothy Huang and I kind of explore what that means. Yeah, and the next one coming out there every 2 weeks is going to be for Stephen Schwartz's 75th birthday, where we talk about all things Stephen Schwartz.
I like the format and that it kind of looks at a very specific topic and kind of goes into depth on that, which is really fun. It's not necessarily the same thing every week.
Right.
You get pretty different and varied episodes and guests.
Yeah. Sometimes, it's somebody who, wrote a book who's like a very specific expert on a topic. Sometimes it's just somebody who, wants to explore a topic like we did with Song Cycles. Yeah. So each conversation is...
And sometimes it's just an idiot like me who shows up.
No. Each conversation is different. Yeah. I feel like there's something in it for everyone, or I hope there's something in it for everyone, to enjoy.
So for this, of course, you do an entire podcast surrounding musical theater. What got you into the art form in the first place?
Well, my parents and grandparents were all really into musicals. So growing up, I was pretty much surrounded by them. It was just a part of growing up, basically. Yeah, so I was taken to musicals as a child. We had cast records, cast albums in our living room that we listened to. I, was introduced to the movie versions, as a child. So I got
there ones as a kid, though, that you were like particularly, drawn to?
Yeah, definitely. As a very young child, I was very into The Music Man, Gypsy. My first Broadway show was the stage version of Meet Me in St. Louis, because I was very much into that movie. And then a stage version came out when I was about 7, and it just was like a logical first musical to go see.
There's a part of me that is so curious, just to tie like Meet Me in St. Louis with the song we're talking about here today, because the star, of course, of Meet Me in St. Louis is Judy Garland. If she had survived longer than she did, I think she would have made a great addition to Somewhere in Follies. I think she would have, I don't know what song or what role necessarily I would want her to be in, but I think she would have been able to nail it.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. I mean, my mind first goes to I'm Still Here, but
of course. Yeah.
But I don't know. She could have done a lot of things.
How about Sondheim? What was your first introduction to Sondheim?
My first intro to Sondheim was definitely Gypsy, even though I didn't know that was Sondheim at the time. My first real introduction to Sondheim that I knew it was Sondheim was Into the Woods. I was about 8, and we had the video that was from, that had been broadcast.
PBS,
yeah. We had taped it from TV because it wasn't something you could buy. Yeah, so I had that video. I watched it over and over again. I tried to get my 3rd grade class to watch it. I brought it to the teacher to try and get her to show to the class. It didn't happen, but and I knew that it was Sondheim because I don't know, we had after that broadcast, I don't know if it was right after, but we had on our videotape an interview with Sondheim and the Pine where they were being interviewed on a stage, and they were talking about the making of Into the Woods. So I watched that interview too, and so that's kind of how I knew that this was Sondheim, and obviously also Lapine, and that they had written this show. And I remember Sondheim saying things like the song "No One Is Alone." It's really about how no one acts alone, that line in it. And it's really about responsibility, our responsibility to each other. I remember hearing that in the interview. I don't know which interview this was, but yeah, so I really absorbed all this at that.
Sorry, how old did you say you were? 8 or 9?
8. Yeah, I was in 3rd grade. Yeah.
Of course. I wonder if in a way your school teacher was just trying to save you, because it's I cannot show this musical to a bunch of grade 3 people.
Yeah.
Grade 3 students.
Right. I mean, I didn't know then that people weren't as into Sondheim as into musical theater as I was, or maybe I knew, but then when I got to high school, that's when other people, I think, started discovering Sondheim. And in my chorus, we did an Into the Woods medley. Definitely there was something with Into the Woods. And I remember thinking oh, I guess now everybody knows Into the Woods. It used to be just my thing.
It was me. It was my thing.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't said this on air before, but there was this core memory that I have. I was obsessed with Into the Woods after I saw it as a teenager. I saw a stage production of it and bought the cast album pretty soon afterwards. But a friend came over to my house, and my little sister took the CD and started playing it to embarrass me. Which, to be fair, kind of did because like everyone else was listening to, you know, what was it, popular music of the day. And I was like, well, it's really good. You should listen to the lyrics because the lyrics are actually really smart and really me trying to justify the song that's playing. How about Follies though? When did you get into Follies?
So when I was in high school, I started getting more into Sondheim and understanding that there were Sondheim shows other than Into the Woods and Gypsy, and a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, which I also knew. So my parents started taking me to see productions of Sondheim shows that were happening around the area. I grew up outside Philadelphia, so we would see stuff in Philadelphia and sometimes come to New York. But my dad took me to see the production of Follies at Paper Mill Playhouse in 1998 when I was in high school. And he and my mom had seen it and decided that it would be something that, you know, I should see at that time. And so my dad took me, we were sitting in the last row of the balcony. I remember like touching the wall behind me there. Right. But I just fell in love with the show from that production, and I sang Losing My Mind in high school. We had like a Broadway concert that our chorus put on, and, you know, people did solos, and I was like, I'm singing Losing My Mind at age 16. And
I love it.
I don't know. I really got the show from that production. But I think like one of my friends from college, she had also seen that production, and she was like, I was too young for it, you know? So I think it varies, but for some reason I just got it and loved it.
I totally understand what these 50-year-olds are going through right now.
Yeah, it was just very clear to me, like that, what they were going through.
Hi everyone, just Kyle breaking into the conversation to tell you about some of the people and organizations that help this show continue to go. As always, of course, if you would like to help support the show for absolutely free, you can give a rating and review on whatever app you listen to podcasts in. That is, of course, greatly appreciated. And like I was mentioning at the beginning of the show, if you would like to help monetarily, which will only help to grow and make this show better, you can do so over at our Patreon page. That is patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Please do not donate if it impacts you negatively financially. That does mean, though, I should give a thank you to the God That's Good tier of Jack, Todd, Robert, Louise, Christopher, Stephen, and Derek. Putting Together is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This week, we are brought to you by the Edmonton Community Foundation. The foundation acts as a bridge between donors and charities to create a strong, vibrant community for generations to come. You can start an endowment fund yourself or with a group. Once it reaches $10,000, it can start distributing funds. Vital Signs is an annual checkup conducted by the Edmonton Community Foundation in partnership with Edmonton Social Planning Council to measure how the community is doing. You can learn more by going to ecfoundation.org. This episode is also brought to you by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider in Alberta, offering internet, electricity, and natural gas with low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. Of course, in Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your internet, electricity, and natural gas from. If you choose Park Power, you are choosing a positive local business. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with local not-for-profits that are working to make a difference for their communities. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kozowski, and we love local here at the Alberta Podcast Network. So it's a great fit. Learn more at parkpower.ca. Now, this is a very interesting song that we're talking about here today, mostly because this was a song that Cameron McIntosh forced Stephen Sondheim to write for the London production of Follies so that it could have basically like a happier ending to the night instead of the pretty tragic ending that Follies normally ends with. However, since that time, it's basically just been an alternate song because it replaced the Ballad of Lucy and Jessie. But really, it just depends on the actress you cast as Phyllis.
Right.
If she's a dancer, then we're going to do, am I getting this right? If she's a dancer, they do the Ballad of Lucy and Jessie.
Yeah.
And if she's a singer, they do All But Underneath. That's basically how they use it.
Yeah, and I think probably if you're both a dancer and a singer, I suspect they just go with Lucy and Jessie. I think it's I don't know how they make that decision if one is both a singer and a dancer.
Sure.
I guess it's for those people who are not strong. But when I saw the Paper Mill production, Dee Hoty was Phyllis, and they did Ah But Underneath. That's probably why I love the song so much, because I saw it when I first saw Follies. This was the song they did.
This feels like what should be in the score.
Yeah. And Dee Hoty is a dancer, so I don't know why
Yeah.
So so I wonder if at a certain point it's also just the director, or does the director and the actor kind of say like, okay, so which song do you want to do?
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that works.
I guess to put a more finer point on this, like, how does it compare for you? Like, if you look at the two songs, why is it that you prefer Ah But Underneath?
Well, as you said, I'm probably expecting it because that was my first experience with the score. I assume that does contribute a lot, but I also, to me, this song is just a much better, clearer encapsulation of Phyllis's character than Lucy and Jesse. It just, like, when I saw this song done, I had no questions, you know? I got it, you know? And I mean, obviously there's a lot to mine, like a lot to explore, but I got it. Whereas like when I first saw Lucy and Jesse, probably when I saw the 2001 production in New York, the revival, it is. I think it's a confusing song. I think you have to listen to it a few times. I think you have to really look at it.
I remember talking about that when we covered it in our Follies season, which is, I don't know, I go back and forth, I guess, a little bit on which one I prefer. I just think it comes down to the performer a little bit, but even just reading the lyrics to the Ballad of Lucy and Jesse, I get tripped up all the time. I'm like, okay, wait, what are they trying to say?
Yeah.
Like, you get kind of lost in the words sometimes.
Right. And I think also, well, one, Ah But Underneath is tempo-wise, it's slower. It's a striptease. It's like moving at like a much slower pace. So like the words come at you slower. But I think also content-wise, Lucy and Jesse is kind of like a split personality. Whereas which is hard to grasp, I think. Whereas Ah But Underneath is a layered personality, which I think is like an easier concept.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that just leads very nicely into the discussion of the Phyllis character specifically. Mm-hmm. How does Phyllis work for you inside of the rest of the show?
She's so fascinating. I know a lot of people love her. I love her. Mm-hmm. She just really like commands the stage. And I think also this number, the way it's done, the striptease, everything, like you really see somebody commanding the stage in this number. You do in Lucy and Jesse too. It's an amazing number, an amazing dance, but like the way she's in control, or the way anyone in a striptease is in control of things, I think that really goes with Phyllis to be like, I'm in control, I'm commanding this.
Well, this whole sequence is also like the Loveland sequence, which I am convinced I saw this referred to somewhere and have now since not been able to find it. So I don't know if I just made this up, but I feel like I have heard it referred to as the Psycho Follies sequence as well, where people are all like, they're all having nervous breakdowns.
Yeah. I mean, I think also it's similar to like just a dream sequence, like in a movie, or, you know, something like where things get dreamlike, where characters are going, you're psychoanalyzing people. And I think that's kind of what the Follies is like. It's all, I mean, obviously it's like all their follies. It's like what their flaws are, like what went wrong for them. Also, it's like these moments where they're like very self-aware, which is kind of like a weird thing to have in a musical theater song. Sure. But they also, except for Ben, like don't actually have any discoveries in the songs that they're being self-aware about. It's much more like presentational. This is what's wrong. And that's it. And Ben, I mean, and then you see the stark difference with Ben, where he has that I don't love me moment. Like that feels like, oh my gosh, he's realizing something. He's going through this whole charade, this whole presentational number, and suddenly has this moment of realization, whereas none of the others have that.
I mean, it's the one part too that like I often ask people if they could go back in time to see like the first run of a musical, what would you go and see? Follies is very commonly the answer.
Yeah.
But specifically for that moment when Ben breaks down, because it's written this way, where it feels like he's making a mistake, like the actor is making a mistake, not the character making a mistake, and like the orchestra is like not playing along. And it's like, I wonder what that felt like in the audience at that time. It's like, oh no, we're seeing something break down. It's like, but no, they're all supposed to feel that way.
Yeah, and that's what I think feels like dreamlike about the whole thing to me. Like, is this real? Is this not? But yeah, like the other ones don't have that. I mean, the folly of youth is also kind of different because they're not really self-aware in that they're just like, it's kind of like, this is what young people think and they're going to be wrong, you know. But it's also interesting, I think, like also the way each of the follies for each one of them, how different they are, how Phyllis's is different because she is the only one that doesn't refer to herself in the first person. It's always like somebody else that's she's talking about.
What do you think that's about?
She can't like embrace herself like as a person, but also like she doesn't know herself. I mean, that's the whole thing with all of her songs, but most clearly, I think, in Ah But Underneath, like at least in Ah But Underneath, it's not some other person with like, like I think the original Uptown Downtown song that was written for her, it was like Harriet or like there's a woman called Harriet and she does this and this and this. And then it's like, there's Lucy and there's Jessie and they have these issues, you know, and here it's just like she or like the lady. So at least she's moved from like giving the other person a name. Yeah.
It's even more abstract at this point.
It's like she does this. Whereas all the other Follies people, all the other characters in the Follies, it's like it's like I'm losing my mind or me, I like to laugh. Me, I like to love. But she can't refer to herself that way. She can't get to that place where it's her.
I like that. Yeah, I think you're totally right. Well, let's do this here. We can continue talking, of course, how this works within the entire show, but we're going to start listening to this song.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen here. This is from a bootleg.
Yes, which is amazing to me to see because, like, for a long time, this production just lived in my memory.
And so you already said, but who is it that is Phyllis in this one?
Dee Hoty.
Okay, let's push play here. Are you hearing that? This is the first time I'm actually watching this. Do you want to just explain maybe the getup that Phyllis is wearing?
I love her costume in this number, but she's wearing like a robe. It's very big. It's very pink, like magenta pink, or at least that's how it's appearing under the lights in this recording. And her hair is swept up, like she looks very fancy.
She totally hits that high note too. She's a beautiful singer.
Yeah, very strong. I mean, that's, I think, why I, like, really reacted to that song. I'm like, she is so strong in this moment, even though there's nothing underneath. So she thinks. But it just, like, is such a strong package, you know?
As far as the lyrics go, anything that you want to call out from kind of this intro?
Yeah. I mean, this is where she's referring to herself as the lady. I mean, already you get, like, these great rhymes, ecstasy, spextasy. It is interesting, like, the thing that counts as what's inside is the very first thing she says, you know, after never judge a book by its cover. And yet she thinks she has nothing inside.
I want to circle back to that because I think it's such an interesting statement to say at the very beginning, right? Because, she's saying, like, don't judge someone by their looks, right? Like, there's something more to that person. I also think this is very much Sondheim going into his it feels like he's going into his like Cole Porter phase with his like double entendres that are going on here, because I feel like those two couplets are commenting on each other or kind of saying the same thing, like never judge a book by its cover, or it's what's inside that counts. Don't judge a lady by her lover, who would also be inside. Like there is this kind of sexual nature that's going on here. already. And we're going into a striptease. So I think that it's actually very intentional.
Yeah, I like that. You know, she's probably always been seen in relation to Ben. So that's like a very general line that's actually really specific for her.
I do think too, like, as you've seen throughout the rest of the Follies show, especially Could I Leave You, it's like, I think she's so upset at this point in her life that she is so compared to her husband that she doesn't have anything, like, there's nothing unique about her, or that's how she feels, at least. That, like, that's what the thing that's draining on her, that she's always compared to her husband, when she thinks she has so much to give, but is always overshadowed.
But she also, it seems like, it could be, you know, it's never stated, so I'm kind of guessing, but like one of her fears is, you know, the fact that she doesn't know who she is without Ben, and that's kind of why she could never actually leave. Yeah,
I think that's the key to it, right? Is like she thinks that there's more, or sorry, she wants there to be more, but she also doesn't know if there is.
Right.
Everyone around her says that there isn't, and she's also kind of believing that as well.
I mean, I'm going to say there is, but like it's hard for her to really, to know what that is and to really get that there would be. And she doesn't leave. And at the end of Could I Leave You, she says, I could leave you, but, you know, I guess, you know, and then at the end of the show, it's all, you know, I'm right here, Ben, I'm right here.
All right. So this is how she continues on. So the huge gown she was wearing, or like overcoat, has been taken off now. What do you want to say about this section?
Yeah, and I also love the dress she's wearing underneath. That's but underneath right now is this beautiful dress that she's
sparkly.
Wearing. Yeah, also magenta. I love these verses. I love the music for these verses. The dun 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 dun. It's like delicious. Like you can tell she is. It just is so fun to sing that, I think. And I think that contributes to like her strength in the song.
I think this is very clearly a great example of Sondheim writing to character. Because as we've seen throughout this entire show, Phyllis is all about like the witty barbs, like the very scathing comment. And this whole song is basically like short staccato, like those short statements.
Yeah.
She's not being like overly explaining things. It's like very short statements. Smart, tart, right?
Yeah.
Dry as a martini. This is, you know, describing her without saying that this is me.
Right. And also like each section here is kind of an opposite, like dry, smart and tart and dry, and then all heart, something by Puccini.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that also goes with like I think the idea that the line that comes later, everything to everybody, like she can be all these things.
Well, what you started off by saying, I think is so true. Like this is definitely showing someone who has layers. I think you see this all the time, at least for my life, where, you know, maybe you're just a work colleague or someone you only meet occasionally. So you have it in your head, like, oh, this is them. This is this thing that they are. And then you find out something's like, what? You also play violin? I never would have known you did this, or whatever it happens to be. Like there's something that they reveal, like there's an entire aspect of your personality in your life that I had no idea was part of it because I had you in this other box over here.
Yeah. Next part of the verse, in the depths of her interior. First of all, amazing rhyming going on here. I mean, it's very pointed, like it stands out, but in a way where you're just like, good job, like that was great. But
interior, inferior, eerier, and actually query her. It actually rhymes.
Superior, exterior, like it's
it just keeps
boom,
going.
Boom, 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 boom. But it's also like, that was another thing, like Sondheim was always like with these fast, very rhymey things, it still had to be easy to sing, and all this is like, even though it's not as fast as some of his other stuff, it's still kind of tongue twistery, but you're not going to get twisted.
Yeah, I think the pace of it allows you not to get tripped up over those words. I'll say this as a man. I have to preface this. I guess it is true for men as well, but I would say maybe even especially for women, being beautiful or being perceived at like the classic idealized version of beauty in our Western world, you can go far. You can get by and do things sometimes a little bit easier, right? Without being questioned quite so much. And I think she's tying into this, right? Like, I get that I'm beautiful. I get that people tell me that, which allows me to get away with a lot of stuff. But there's all this other stuff people don't see because they're just focused on the beauty aspect.
And also, what is the something even eerier that's so mysterious? It just makes me be like, what? Well, I think also she probably is the same way. Like, there's something in me I don't understand.
This is why I created an entire fan fiction of Phyllis being a werewolf. So I'm going to be releasing that very, very soon.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And just to have something that psychologically interesting in a compact verse that's all rhymes in this really complex 3-syllable rhyme, it's, I mean, A+ right there.
Very good. Hey, this Sondheim guy knows how to write lyrics, apparently. Weird.
Yeah, I would give him an A+ for that stanza.
All right, so let's see what she says next here.
She was chic, sleek, anything in fashion. That was just a shell. Take a close peek, you could see the passion. That was one as well. To conclude, you'd soon discover the secret of her appeal was the wonder which lay underneath, which she wasn't about to reveal.
So some jewelry has now come off. Her attendants have come and ripped those away.
Yeah, her kind of, there was one layer that came off her, like, shoulder.
Oh, that's right.
Shoulder part of her
thing.
dress. Yeah, you're starting to see the chorus in this staging. They're the ones that are currently taking off these things, and I think,
right.
Well, we can get to the chorus soon, but just wanted to point that out. Chic, sleek, more adjectives that are something that she's going to be for somebody else. Chic, sleek, anything in fashion. But then she, instead of more of that, it's now she's commenting on those descriptions, those things. That was just a shell. So she, I mean, at a certain point, she is saying there is stuff underneath. There is passion there.
I like this fact of, like, she's gone through like 6 or 7 stanzas. This is her, like, main point, right? To conclude,
right? You're
going to soon discover that this is really what's going on here.
Well, I think also in that part, she is understanding that mostly men, I guess, but everybody likes that mystery of, like, what's underneath. And that's also like something she's using for her personas, that there is more.
That's the double meaning here, because this is framed within a striptease. Again, for the people who are viewing her or looking at her, what is underneath is literally her body. Like, but she is also talking about her interiority. Like, this is what's underneath me as a person standing in front of you.
Yeah, and she's using it, both literally, like, you are excited to watch me take off these layers, but emotionally, I'm using that as well when I'm in relationship with you.
Yeah, because the biggest thing here too is, like, hey, I have the secret, it's eerie, but I'm not going to reveal it to you either. I'm not going to just immediately give you what you want. Like, you're attracted to this mysteriousness of it, but I'm not going to reveal what that mystery actually is.
Right. Yeah, I'm never going to be vulnerable.
Okay, so the chorus comes here. It looks like I think they're about to rip off a sash here, just based on what I've paused the video. So let's see if I'm right. Oh, I am right. Both earrings came off. Very good sashaying, I should say here. And there's the necklace.
That was reliability, the curse of versatility. Smart, shy, whatever was demanded. She'd only allow a man to see enough to fan his fantasy. She made compliance into a science one of
the skirt has come off here now, but what do we think about the chorus?
Yeah, I think this chorus is so fascinating. And it also makes me think about it in relation to all the other Follies, like we were talking about before, and like which ones use choruses and which ones don't.
Sure.
And the ones that do are her and Ben, which I think links them in this really cool way that Sally is completely alone on the stage. That's her Folly. But,
right.
And Buddy, there's people with him, but it's like very specific people from his life. It's just these two women.
Yeah.
Whereas like Phyllis and Ben have these choruses for their numbers, which is just so fascinating. Like why, when they're going into this dream sequence Follies thing, like why do they imagine a chorus, you know?
Yeah, that is fascinating because I think all of them ultimately do feel alone. Maybe with more money or with more power that Ben and Phyllis have, they're able to more quickly envision like attendants surrounding them. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder like, yeah, that's an interesting point about like feeling alone, where it's like Sally understands alone because she is alone all the time. Buddy's alone still has these two people in it, but Phyllis and Ben, I wonder if it's like they don't know how to be alone, but so now I'm thinking of like Ben using I and Phyllis using third person. Like I wonder if Phyllis had used, like Ben's kind of hearing his stuff parroted back at him, and that kind of, I think, possibly triggers his realization. Like if Phyllis had been able to say I, like, and have that said back to her, would she have been able to like go there and have more of like an understanding of herself? But she just is not ready to do that, I guess.
Just as a fun thought experiment here, I know that this isn't really this has nothing to do, I guess, with what is shown within the show, but like, do you feel, I guess, as an audience member that you actually want Phyllis and Ben to reconcile? Or do you feel like, no, Phyllis, get out of there. Be your own woman?
It's so interesting because I've always loved that moment at the end where she's like, Ben, I'm right here. Like thinking about it now, as I've been like really thinking about this song, I'm like, oh, like she can't leave him. Like that's what's going on. But previously I did think about it as like they really loved each other. And I guess it's so interesting too, because in this show, you do see them as young people. So you kind of are able to see them before life has made them this way. I don't think you see enough of them as young people. To really, it's kind of surface the young people for Sally, Phyllis, Buddy, Ben, but at least you do see them and you see like how they were a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I still love that moment. Like, Ben, I'm here, I'm right here, because it really feels like she does care for him, and I think that's probably why I responded to it. Like when the wrappings fall, like there's still that love there, I guess.
I mean, there is this metaphorical aspect too that I feel like I kind of felt when I watched the National Theatre version of Follies with Imelda Staunton. I think in part what these breakdowns are supposed to show is not a full, and I'm all better now, and I'm on the road to recovery, but it's like the first step or first half step to that. And I'm wondering if Phyllis is seeing like that first half step and like, oh, he actually is maybe trying to make an overture of change, right? I'm seeing something in him that I hadn't seen before.
Right.
And that reminds me of why I loved him in the first place.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Like, yeah, she's never seen him as probably has never seen him as broken down as this.
Right.
And it's suddenly different.
He's showing her under his veil, I guess, is maybe the way to put that, right? Like this whole song, she's talking about, I still have these veils, like I can be sly, I can be candid if I want to, but which is part of my issues because I can be anything for anybody sort of thing. So no one actually knows who I am.
Right.
What is it? The curse of the chameleon or changeable as a chameleon. Yeah,
no, that's really true. I don't know. I think it's such a complicated ending in that way because everybody, I mean, Sondheim, I guess they wanted it darker at the end. Yeah. But I still think this is pretty dark. I don't know. I guess it has that hopeful, like, we're all going to walk out into the sunlight and, try and figure things out. But I don't know. That's still pretty dark to me, I guess.
I think so too. I love Lottie Dottie with everybody.
Yeah.
I think it's like, right. The one that always gets me rhyming chameleon with really-un, and then underneath goes on to the next line. So it's just the first part of underneath is rhyming with chameleon.
That's one of those rhymes that just goes right by it. Like you like hear it internally, and but I don't know if I've ever really clocked that before.
So I think this will probably take us to the end here. So let's listen to... Still has her gloves on, I have to point
out. Looks like she's ice skating here.
That's the next production. Follies on ice.
I would see it.
I wonder who the costume designer was for this to come up with how each piece is going to actually come off of this costume.
I know. That must be such a fun challenge for designers.
I've just been reading the history of Sunday in the Park with George and learning how they made Bernadette Peters' dress that she actually walks out of at one point is like wild to to learn about.
This is such a weird moment that they have here where she's
she's like pelvic thrusting.
Yeah, but nobody is there. And then they come.
Right. Then blows a kiss.
She was grand, bland, brave or brisk or brittle, anything required. Concerned and strictly non-committal.
All right. Do you want to try and take a stab at describing how that ending went?
I think, we were talking through the her dancing with the men. I think we covered that part. And so then everything comes off. A sheet comes in front of her. They take off the gloves. And then there's like some shadow.
They put the sheet right in front of her, backlight it so you can see her from
and she's kind of dancing back there or like striking poses there. And then she like pulls it down a little to her face and has the last line and then kind of, I guess, disappears out the back and then the sheet falls down and there's nothing there.
I do like there's a little bed set up. She has like a pillow in front of her for a bit as she takes her dress off.
Yeah.
Which bed or I don't know if that technically is a chaise lounge or whatever they used to. A little fainting couch is what she was laying on.
Right.
What do we want to say about this ending piece?
Yeah. First, there's one more verse. The grand, bland, brave or brisk or brittle, anything required.
Yeah, brave or brisk or brittle is cool.
He's using like a lot of alliteration in this song in certain parts. But yeah, I just love the line, and a little tired, because I think that is probably something that's actually real for her. Like she's probably actually pretty tired. And that's like a moment where something that she's like kind of putting on is probably actually true.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like putting up a face or a mask for any extended period of time.
Yeah.
At certain points, it's like, I am exhausted keeping this up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it just kind of leads right into that last spoken line, building on the potential, stripped down to the essential, confidential, way down underneath. And then the ensembles, doing their thing with the saying she was. But yeah, it just leads to that very last line where she's not even there.
I mean, it's, I guess, a very like a literal translation of that. Like sometimes when the wrappings fall, there's nothing underneath at all. So when it drops down, she isn't actually standing there.
Right.
But also, what she's fearful of is like, if I actually am myself, if I'm not trying to pretend to be all these things to all people, maybe there is nothing there. Maybe there is nothing
right
underneath this to pursue.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the realization, even though we don't see her really realize it in the way that Ben realizes his realization. But I think it also feels like, has she known this the whole time? I'm not sure.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, it almost feels like it's her reason. It's her reason. It's not like it is a fear, but it's also her reason for not changing anything.
Yeah, right. It's like it is an excuse to a certain extent here as well, right? This is, yes, her fear that there's nothing there, but it's also a good excuse to not try.
Yeah.
for something more.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of Phyllis's folly, is that she ultimately just likes being comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
She doesn't want to take chances, take risks, like do things that will create that person that she wants to be there, but is not currently there.
So if you were to take a look at this song then, if you were trying to compare it with the entire score of Follies, it's only like whatever, 27 songs. It's a long score.
Yeah.
How would you rate it? Where would you put it in your ratings? Would it be like top, middle, bottom of the list?
Oh, for me, it's definitely in the top tier of songs. I mean, I just love the whole Follies sequence. I would put the whole Follies sequence in the top tier. I mean, it's just so cool and so really unlike a lot of, most things in musical theater, because it has that dreamlike, self-aware quality that I've talked about. But yeah, I would definitely put this toward the top.
Do you think that Follies will see a revival in the next few years?
I don't know. We've had so many productions, but at least in New York, I don't know. I think with this resurgence of Sondheim since his passing, it's quite possible that people will want to do a Follies revival. I mean, I think there's also always talk of like a Follies film. Is that in the works still? I don't even know. I don't follow that stuff, but
there was like rumors of it because I've forgotten his name now, but the person who directed that National Theater version of Follies was attached to direct a film at some point, but I haven't heard any news on that for like 3 years, so I'm going to say that's probably dead at this point. You'd have heard something by now, I think. I think Follies could lend itself into a movie medium pretty easily, but also you have to realize that the audience for it is going to be very small. So it's like,
right.
Can you do a Follies movie for like, let's just say $10 to $15 million, or is that going to feel cheap?
I mean, the thing with Follies also is that I think it needs stars to be what it is. Like I saw a smaller type production of Follies, that wasn't on Broadway or off Broadway or anything. And they did like, the actors were so great. They did such a good job. But I kept feeling like this show to me needs stars because that's what it's about. And there's something about it that calls for that. I also wonder if like it just missed the boat on being a movie. Like it probably should have been a movie in the 70s when they could get those kind of stars that would have been stars. Like I saw in the Paper Mill production, Ann Miller was in it. Like someone like that, where it's like they have been in those kind of movies from that era and like have been. Whereas like now 50 years ago, so Follies was 70 and then it's looking back to.
Oh yeah, you're going back to like the 1919, I think is the earliest Follies girl up until like 1940 something, 45, I think.
Yeah, so like 40 so it's like really just 30 years, 30 to 40 years. So we're talking like late 70s, 80s. So like it's possible, I think. Like there's some.
So what you're really saying, we need stars of today looking back at the hallowed days of the 1990s.
Like I think if they don't make it now, I mean, unless they, I don't know. There might be other ways to do it. I haven't put too much thought into it, but
I keep thinking of this. This is an idea that only I find interesting. So your audience is like me and like 3 other people. But I think in some regards, this would actually work as a meta musical, which is like you're watching someone make a movie about Follies.
Yeah.
And so you're actually seeing them break down in real time, like the actual actors who are portraying these characters.
Yeah, I mean, they could take Ted Chapin's book and adapt it into a film, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. Right. So you're seeing that.
The making of Follies. Yeah.
The making of Follies, and then, you tweak it with like a creative license and seeing them actually break down as people breaking down.
Right.
And this has been so great. I know you told people about your podcast, but if people wanted to find you, see what you're up to, what are some easy ways to do so online?
Yeah, well, I have a website, shoshanagreenberg.com, very simple there. I'm on most social media, Instagram, Shoshana Creates, Twitter as V Marshmallow, and Mellow spelled MELLOW. And then the podcast is on all social media, Scene to Song.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for listening. You can send emails to puttingittogetherpodcast@gmail.com, and you can follow Sondheim Podcast on Twitter or Instagram. You can also support the show on Patreon by going to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Thank you to the Alberta Podcast Network, to the Edmonton Community Foundation, and to Park Power this week. Putting It Together is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere that you can get podcasts from. So consider subscribing so that you never miss an episode. Next week, I Never Do Anything Twice, except an episode on the song I Never Do Anything Twice. As always, a big thank you to the great Chris Taniguchi, who designed the podcast artwork, and Nick Driscoll for composing our theme music. Well, we've reached the end of our episode. Yes, I know. Goodbye for now.